Hello there, and welcome to The Meaningful Stitch. This is episode 27, and I'm Amy Palko, and I'm coming to you from Edinburgh, Scotland. And this is my digital home from home, a place where I get to share with you my knitting practice and my knitting projects. Now, it's been a wee while since I last did an update podcast. You might have seen that I had two special episodes. One was the Shawl Wall, and the other one was Shawl Wall Part 2. So they have sat between the last update podcast episode and this one, which means that I have got quite a lot to show you. I don't have a massive amount of finished objects, but I've got a lot of works in progress I've been casting on left, right and centre. So I'm going to be able to show you all of that, and I'm excited to do so, as well as some things that have come into my life in between times. Some yarn, some books. But before we start on all of that, I wanted to share with you a card that I drew for us for today. And it's from this deck here, which is the Yarn Tarot. This is a really fun deck. It's got beautiful illustrations. You can see some of them on the back there for the cards. And basically it takes a traditional tarot and it applies fibre arts to it in the graphics. So we have the swords are knitting needles and the wands are crochet hooks. The cups are spindles and the pentacles are weaving looms. So it's a really lovely deck, and it's just a really recent one. It just only recently came out. I actually did a presentation on this deck. Gosh, it must have been back in October. And I think the release date for it was delayed, but it is now finally out. So I thought I would take this opportunity to draw a card from that deck. And this is the card that I got. It is the Four of Wands. So you can see these 4 crochet hooks and some lovely balls of green yarn and some green yarn hooked and strung up around the top. The 4 cards in the minor arcana are always about structure and stability. But with the wands, which is a representative of the element of fire, which is about action and inspiration and movement and progress, it's a really joyful card, because here the structure and the stability provide the framework for us to experience joy and celebration in its fullness. It's about coming to an end or coming to a joyful conclusion on something. So I do have some joyful conclusions. But before I do that, I just wanted to say that when I sat down to have my lunch before I was recording today, I sat next to a deck of traditional tarot, which is my husband's. So my husband draws a card from the Rider-Waite tarot deck every single day and has done for years and years now. And he had left the tarot deck on the table with the card that he drew for the day upturned. And it just so happened to be the Four of Wands. So there you go. I just thought I'd bring it over to show you. This is the traditional Rider-Waite. I put my cup of tea down so I can hold the other one at the same time. And this is the Yarn Tarot. So you can see how they've taken the imagery from the traditional deck and replicated it through with an appreciation for the fibre arts. So there we go. That's very cool. So apparently we're both up for some joy. So that's good. That's good to know. I hope you find that the structure of this podcast today brings you lots of joy. Like I said, I've got some finished objects, I've got some whips, I've got some mending. I went to a lovely yarn event that I want to tell you about as well. And I bought some yarn. Not a lot of yarn, but I did buy some, so I'm going to share that with you as well. And then at the very end, I'm going to share with you what brings me joy at the moment and what has brought me joy over the last 3 to 4 weeks since I last shared that with you. So I think we'll start with what I'm wearing. This, and you've seen this before, but I will tell you again what it is. This is the Pink Velvet, and it's by Andrea Mowry, and I have knitted it in Ginger Twist Massum Mayhem, and this is the colour Crunchy Leaves. Ginger Twist yarn, Ginger Twist Studio, is the yarn that my friend Jess from Ginger Twist in Edinburgh, the yarn shop, dyes up, and she has so many beautiful, bright, vibrant colours. When you walk into her shop, which is a small shop, but oh my goodness, it's got a lot packed into it. It's all the way up to the ceiling. It's absolutely fantastic. And on the left-hand side of her shop, she has a rainbow of yarn, and it's all the skeins hung up, and you can see all these beautiful colours and all of these amazing bases. So if you are in Edinburgh, it is absolutely well worth going to. But if you're not anywhere near Edinburgh, she does have an online shop where you can go and treat yourself to some Ginger Twist Studio yarn there. So, like I said, this is Massam Mayhem in the Crunchy Leaves colourway. The Massam Mayhem is a Massam and BFL base, and that will feature a little bit later on in the podcast as well, because it's a beautiful base. It's very, very soft. It's not that kind of silky, sort of springy merino, but it is incredibly soft. It's not itchy or scratchy or toothy at all, and it's such a lovely yarn to work with. So I bought some of that to go with this fabulous yarn, which is Ching Fibre, and it's the Melted Baby Suri in the colourway Shindig. Now, I bought that yarn expecting it to be a lot redder than it was, and when it arrived, it wasn't really what I had expected. But this is the issue this is the thing with hand-dyed yarn, is every skein is unique, and I think that's one of the wonderful things about it, actually. But and also when we buy online, it can be quite difficult to match, to colour match and get an accurate representation. That said, when this skein arrived, it wasn't what I expected, but I absolutely loved it. It's bright, it was highly variegated, and I just knew that I wanted to use it for colour work. So I have used it for colour work, and if you know the pink velvet, then, and you've seen it before, then you might not necessarily recognise this as the pink velvet, because you can't really make out the colour work in it. I'm trying to find a place where you might, but I'm not seeing it. Basically what's happened is, because the yarn is so highly variegated, that actually that's all you see. You just see the variegation of the colour. You don't actually see the pattern itself. And I quite like that. I think it's quite unusual. It almost looks like stained glass, or like a Klimt painting or something. So I'm really pleased with the effect that I got on that. And it was a nice surprise. You know, it's, I think, one of the wonderful things about our knitting and our creativity is that it takes us on a journey, and we never quite know where we're going to end up when we cast on. And it just so happened that I think this one worked out particularly well. I like to wear it with this shawl here, which I took off just before I podcasted. It's the Birds of a Feather shawl, and this is knitted in La Bien-Aimée, and it's her helix base and her mohair silk base. Now, La Bien-Aimée mohair silk has a high silk content, which means that it absolutely gleams in the skein and in your knitting. Now, the colourways for this are, let's start at this end. This is Goldenrod, moving through to Rust, and then through to this lovely dark red, which is called Kitsune, which I think is Japanese for fox, but I could be wrong. The mohair silk is also in the Rust colourway, so you can see how the base is really taken the dye in quite a different way, depending on what the fibre content is. So I love this shawl. I really like to wear it with this garment in particular, because I think the two are very complementary together. It's a very special shawl to me because my mum purchased the yarn from the La Bien-Aimée, and she wound it off half of each skein and sent me half and kept half for herself, and then sent me a whole skein of the mohair, and she had a whole skein of the mohair. And then we both knitted this shawl, but we didn't tell each other what order we were going to use the colours in. So our shawls are similar but different, but they come from the same skein. And I think that's a really special thing to do, and a lovely shared project. So there we go. This is the Birds of a Feather shawl by Andrea Mowry and the Pink Velvet by Andrea Mowry. Got a bit of a theme going on here, which will also continue. So there you go. That's what I'm wearing right now. And as to what I've finished, what's off my needles, well, I only actually have one project that is off my needles, but it's a big thing. And it's this. It is the Cinnabar Shawl, and this is again by Andrea Mowry. Like I said, I seem to have a bit of a theme going here. There we go, that's the way around. Now, it's absolutely massive. It's a huge shawl. That's not even half of it. So I probably finished this shawl at roughly the wrong point of time in the year. It really is more of an autumnal winter shawl because it is heavier weight. It is basically like wearing a blanket. However, it was no sooner that I had that thought than the weather turned and we started to get rain and hail and snow and bright sunshine all in the same day. So we've had about a week or so of that and our temperatures have really fallen away. So it is supposed to get warmer next week, but I have actually had more use out of this the last couple of weeks than I expected to. A couple of weeks beforehand, we actually had our neighbours were outside sunbathing in their garden, so that tells you how warm it was. And now, well, let's put it this way, you would rather wear this than a bikini. So it's a beautiful big shawl. I'll just show you it on. Here we go. Oh my goodness. Now, I haven't even told you what I've used for the yarn, but it is, oh there it is. It's this yarn here, which is a Shopple Crazy Zauberball, and this is in the colour Orangery. I had 2 balls of this, and this is how much I have left of the second ball. So I have quite a lot left. I'll need to find a good project for that. It might be fun to put a bit of colour work, a colour work yoke perhaps, or maybe some colour work mittens with a matching hat or something like that, because there really is quite a bit left in this. But as you can see, it's got all these beautiful pinks and purples and oranges and sort of creamy colour, creamy peaches. It's beautiful. It's a really fun yarn to knit with because you're following the colour and you don't quite know, again, what the colour is going to look like when you knit it up. The yarn is going to do its own thing. My main colour, that's the contrast colour, but my main colour is actually this, and it's the Drops Charisma, which is 100% superwash wool, and it's in a DK weight. It is a heavy DK, I would say. It's, have a slurp of my tea. It's a heavyweight DK, and as you'll see, the Shopple Crazy Zauberball is not a heavyweight DK. In fact, I would say it's actually a light fingering. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure what you get, how many meters you get for the weight, but it feels like a light fingering when you're knitting with it. So that's not in the pattern. That is a modification that I've done with my yarn substitution, because I really like when you vary, particularly in brioche, when you vary the 2 different yarns. So you have got 2 different yarn weights, because what happens, if you can see, we've got this very kind of springy, chunky DK, and then we've got this very delicate fingering weight, and I will just try and not dip it in my tea. That would be good. I will put that over here. There we are. Yeah, so I'll show you the other side so that you can see. So that's because that's a wonderful thing about brioche as well, is that it is reversible. So you can see that we've got this kind of springy, you can really see the texture, I think, there. We've got this springy DK and this very delicate 4-ply. This is a great pattern to really showcase that off, because you have these kind of breaks where you kind of reverse the front and the back. So instead of these being brioche pearls, they become brioche knits, and then you revert back. And it kind of creates these lines, which you can kind of see, but of course, because the yarn is so variegated, it's slightly harder to see it, but I think it's quite effective nonetheless. And then on the other side, this is not brioche, but this is what happens when you knit your, you knit as though you are going to knit brioche, so you're knitting each row twice. So instead of, when you get to the end of a row, turning your work and knitting back again the opposite direction, you are sliding all your stitches back to the beginning and you're knitting that row again. And when you get to here, you stop doing brioche stitch and you just start doing stockinette. And it creates this really fun and beautiful, almost like a woven fabric, which is very beautiful. And then you've got all your increases happening here. So basically you end up with, I think maybe like 2/3 of the shawl would be the brioche and about 1/3 in this lovely kind of woven texture. You might remember that I knitted this, I think it must have been January last year. I think it was January last year. I knitted a version of this using some beautiful hand-dyed 4-ply with another crazy Zauber ball. So I didn't, vary with the yarn weights in that one. And I gave that to my gran. So she has that one, but I really had a craving for some brioche. I find brioche very meditative. I find it very relaxing. And when you finish it, you've got this fabulous, cozy, bouncy, delightful shawl. And I really had a hankering for that. So that's why I cast that on, and I had that pattern already. I think there is something to be said for knitting patterns more than once. We buy all of these patterns, and once we've knitted them, we quite often have a refined and more discerning sense of what it is that we want from that garment or that shawl. There are things that we might do differently. We have learned things about our own experience with that pattern, and so we make adjustments in the second one or the third one, or it's a refining process, or it's a playful process. And I would certainly say this was quite a playful process with varying the 2 weights of yarn. Another brioche shawl that I have done something similar with was the Point Shawl by Julie Dubrow. And in that one I used what's a light fingering single ply merino. And on the other side, my contrast, I've used a mohair silk. So I've got the two contrasting yarn weights, but also contrasting yarn fibres. And the two create a really interesting dynamic. And I think that's a really fun thing to play with. So you might want to try that too, particularly when it is a shawl and the gauge and the specificities around your yarn are a little bit more looser. But just make sure that you've got plenty of yarn to play with and you don't end up playing yarn chicken like I did with this lovely one here, which is the Quadrangle Spires by Stephen West that sits on the back of my sofa now. And yes, I did end up having to play yarn chicken with that because my gauge was completely off. So I don't quite know what happened with that one, but never mind. But there we go. It's now off the needles. It was a big knit. It was a lot of knitting. Oh dear, I'm all tangled up now. It was a lot of knitting, but it was exactly what I needed when I needed it, and it was a real joy. It's a joy to knit, and it's a joy to complete and now wear. Although I think I'm not going to get a massive amount of wear out of it until after the summer, but there we go. Nice for cuddling up on the sofa in the evenings with. So there we go, that is the Cinnabar Shawl by Andrea Mowry. As I said, there's a bit of a theme there, but the next thing that I'm going to share with you is not by Andrea Mowry, and it's actually what I've mended. So this is also something which is now off the needles, and it was off the needles before, and I put it back on the needles because I was unhappy with the cast off. Now, the lesson here is that, like I said, sometimes when we knit something twice, we learn about it in the process of knitting it, and then in the second one or the third one or whatever, then we take that learning into those projects. I basically, with this one then, tried to run before I could walk. So, so this is the Rocket Tea by Tanis Lavallee, and I made alterations to it before I had knitted it once. And sometimes that's absolutely fine, and sometimes it's not. And I think when it's not, you have to be willing to go back and make the fixes to it. And so that was what this mending was about. It wasn't because it was broken or because it had a hole in it or it had unravelled or anything like that. It was because I made a modification to the pattern and I didn't like how it turned out. And basically what I did was I cast off the body and the sleeves and the neckline using 2 strands of this mohair, which I did have right beside me but has now gone missing. So I can't show that to you, but you can see it there. It's this fabulous speckled, sort of very soft sage green shade, minty green, and it had these black and like fluorescent yellow sprinkles. That's not the word I'm looking for. It's dotted all over in these beautiful little sparkles here. So yes, but so I held 2 strands of the mohair and did an I-cord cast off. Now it did tell you to do an I-cord cast off, but it told you to do the I-cord cast off using the same size of needles as you had knitted the rest of the body in. And I have normally used I-cord cast offs when I've been knitting a shawl, not a garment. So when you do an I-cord cast off in a shawl, you generally want to have a bit of stretch to it because you're going to be blocking it. And you don't want the shawl to be kind of runched in or tightened up because of the tight I-cord. So I generally go up a needle size and do my I-cord cast off for a shawl. I applied that same logic to the garment, and that was wrong. So I had this double strand of mohair with the larger needles, and it just kind of created this really kind of puffy cast off, which, this is the other thing, I knew I didn't like it. I knew I didn't like it when I did it down here, and yet I carried on and I did it on the sleeves and on the neckline, and I didn't like it overall, and I never wore it, and that was sad because I do really like this yarn. The other yarn that's there is this gorgeous, can you see that? It's got all these beautiful shades in it. It's this here, which is Isaiah Highland Wool, and it's in the colourway Sky. So I just thought it was a real shame that I wasn't getting the wear out of it, so I ripped back the fluffy I-cord from the bottom of the body, and I then had another stripe of the opaque of the Highland wool, and I decided that instead of the I-cord I was going to do 1x1 rib, and then I was going to do a tubular cast off. So it took me all Saturday morning, a couple of Saturdays ago, to do that. So I ripped back the plain stockinette, I re-knitted it as 1x1 rib, and then I did my 2 setup rows for the tubular cast off, and then I spent ages Kitchener stitching the stitches and completing the tubular cast off. And again, I knew when I was about probably only like a fifth of the way around that I didn't like how it was looking, and yet I persisted. I carried on until I had cast the whole thing off, and then looked at it and thought, no, it's not right. It's not right. I don't like it. So it went in the naughty corner for a while until I finally brought it back out and I ripped back the 1x1 ribbing. I then had to decide if I was going to knit back a stockinette stripe, and I decided not to, and I just decided I was just going to follow the pattern. How novel! So using the Highland wool and using, I think it's 3.5mm needles, which is what the rest of the body was knitted up in, I did my I-cord cast off. And it is neat, it is unobtrusive, it is exactly what I wanted. It sits so well, it's absolutely in keeping with the rest of the garment. I then did exactly the same thing for the armhole, so I ripped back the cast off, the fluffy cast off, because fortunately I hadn't done the 1x1 rib and the tubular cast off anywhere else. So I ripped off the fluffy cast off and redid that in the Highland wool, And then I did exactly the same for the neckline, and oh my goodness, it is so much better. I cannot tell you. I'm so pleased with it. I'm pleased I went back to do it. I would absolutely knit another one, and I would knit it according to the pattern. No more messing about. I think it actually looks incredibly neat with that smaller needle and the I-cord and the non-fluffy yarn. I think it looks very classic and stylish and well worth going back and doing the fix on it. So I'm glad I did it. I just wish I'd done it the first time. But you know, if there is something that is in your cupboard or in your boxes full of garments that you're not getting anywhere out of because there's something not quite right about it. It could be that you decrease too many times on the sleeves and the sleeves are too tight, or it could be that the body is too cropped and you know you've got like half a skein left, so you could actually add another inch or so onto the body. It could be something like that, or it could be, you know, that there is a little bit of a hole that needs to be darned, or it could be that, you know, that the colour was never quite right and maybe you need to over dye it. There are a whole host of things, you know, that we can do to make our garments more wearable. And I just think it's such a shame when we put all of our time and effort and energy and resources into these beautiful pieces and then for some reason they get stuffed into a box and we don't wear them. And I think this is really the garment that's going to remind me of that truth. Whenever I feel like, oh, I don't really want to go back to that piece, it's already off the needles, I'm not putting it back on, and then I'm going to remember this and remember the success that it was and that it was absolutely well worth doing. So maybe that will inspire you to do the same. So there we go, that's the two things that are now completely off the needles. This will not be going back on the needles. It doesn't need it now. It's perfect as it is. So the Cinnabar Shawl by Andrea Mowry, the Rocket Tee by Tanis Lavallee. And I will leave links to all of the patterns, all of the yarns mentioned, along with images in a Patreon post. So if you go to the description box just below, you'll see that there's a link to Patreon. And that Patreon post is free for everybody to access. So you don't need to be a patron to access that page. But what it does allow me to do is it allows me to share lots of images, lots of links. I'm not limited to a word count like I am on YouTube. And I certainly found that quite often when I was doing my description notes on YouTube, that I was running out of space because I just had too much to share with you. So, and then bringing it over onto Patreon means that I actually get to share the link to the video, but I also get to share lots of images with you too, so that if there's anything there that you'd like to see a little bit closer up, then that's probably the place to look for that. Okay, so works in progress. What's on my needles? Oh, the first thing I'm going to share with you is this actually. This is my melting marl blanket. This is a massive project. It will be a long-term ongoing project. Expect to see it many more times in the future. Basically, this, I'll show it to you here. This is where I'm up to just now. Basically, it's a project, it's a design by Stephen West, where you hold two strands of fingering weight together for the whole thing, and you move through three different patterns. So you've got these kind of chevrons here with the central ladder, and then you've got these sort of pearl ridge, you've got these garter ridge bumps in a kind of a chevron shape moving into a wave, and then I think the last one is I think it's just like an old shell lace, you know, with the garter bump and the eyelets, which is one of my favourite laces to do actually. There'll be more of that coming up as well. So basically what I'm doing is I'm using up all my scraps, and I'm starting from black and moving up through grey into sort of like a beigey neutral and into white. And alongside that I'm going from purple through to dark red, through to light red, through to orange, through to yellow. So what the plan is that I'm going to work that through into the center of the blanket, and then moving from the white and the yellow, I'm going to move all the way back through all of the colors back to the black and the dark purple. So I'll have like a fade that comes into, lightens up as it comes into the center. This, like I said, I've done 2 sections, and there's 3 sections overall, and then those 3 sections are repeated 4 times. So by the time I get to the 3rd section of the 2nd repeat, I should be at white, and then I'll work my way back. The way that I'm figuring out exactly how much yarn to use is with the use of this wee gadget here. This is a tiny digital scale. I think it says it's a jeweler's scale. And for example, I am, oh, where's a good, let me see, oh, there's one. For example, I would take something like this. Oh no, that's already, that's attached, Amy. Okay, this one. So you could take this ball of yarn here, and then I open up my scale, and then it's got this like little clear tray, and the tray comes off, and I balance it on top, turn it on. Of course it should be like on a straight surface, which it's not, and then I can just pop that on there, and it'll tell me exactly to 2 decimal points the weight of that particular ball of yarn. And then I'm making a wee note of that, and then I'm dividing it by 2, and then I'm knitting half of the ball into the blanket, and I'm making a note of all of that in my notebook so that I can follow it going back. So I'm going to be able to replicate the fade going out. I think that scale cost me £6 or £7, and I got it on Amazon. So very affordable, and I found it really quite handy because I think it will also help me to reduce the chances of yarn chicken in the future as well, because I'll be able to more closely judge exactly how much yarn I've got left. And that was really what my issue with the quadrangle spires had been. It was trying to use a kitchen scale which wasn't as accurate to figure out exactly how much yarn I had left and how much meterage that would give me, and I came a cropper. So but I've got this huge beautiful big swan bag. It's full of my project, and it's full of all of the different yarns and things. You can see most of them are going to be these lighter colours now, like this and this, because I am now moving through all of those lighter shades. Well, I will be moving through all of those lighter shades. So it's an exciting project. It's a long-term one. It's one that just kind of sits in here in what we call our sunroom, and yeah, I just work on it every now and again. So I am participating in Mega's Blankets of Dreams Mal. Mega has the Skeins of Dreams podcast, which if you haven't watched already, you really should. Go and give her a subscribe. And she is running this Blankets of Dreams Mal. And there's a lot of people participating in it, so you've probably heard it mentioned before. But I'm really enjoying participating in that too, so I'll get to share some photographs of my very slow progress. There's a lot of stitches on the needle, so... Oh, I should say something about the needle actually, because the needle... I went to Be Inspired Fibres and picked up this needle. It is a 5mm, I think, Chiagu. Yeah, 5mm Chiagu needle, and I picked it up specifically because the Chiagu red lace fixed circulars have this wonderful cord that doesn't hold a memory, so it stays straight. So if you're wanting to do something like a shawl project or a big blanket project, I really could think of no better needle for the job. And I think actually trying to use the right tools for the right job is actually half the battle. So, so there we go. As you can see, I'm moving up through these kind of lighter greys and shifting up into these slightly brighter reds now. So, so yeah, that's my first whip, and it's a long-term whip, and you will be seeing it again, I would imagine. The next one you have also seen before. Now, I think I shared with you, when I shared this with you, I had only done the, oh, there's the mohair I tried to show you before for the rocket tee. Isn't it gorgeous? Anyway, okay. So when I shared this with you before, oh dear, I'm terribly tangled now. This was just about to be cast on, and I had finished I think I'd finished a pocket. I'd done a gauge swatch, and the gauge swatch hadn't been successful. It was far too big, and so I had done another gauge swatch, and the second gauge swatch had been spot on, which is good because you then use your gauge swatches as pockets. So then I knitted a second, and then I cast on the body. Now I've made a lot of progress on this, so are you ready? This is the, I need to hold it closer so you can see. Can you see that? It's hard to, oh, there we go. This is the Pitied Whiskey, and it's a beautiful cabled cardigan designed by Thea Coleman. And my daughter chose this as her Christmas jumper. You can kind of see, well, you can see it's a little bit see-through, and that's because this is knit up in Holst Super Soft. And I'll show you the yarn on the skein if I can. There we go. It's Holst Super Soft, and I bought a cone of it. This is in slate grey. And when I did my swatches, I did wash and block my swatches because this is a yarn that changes a lot in the washing and the blocking process. So even although I know that it looks a little bit thin and a bit see-through here, that actually I know from my swatches that it is going to puff up quite significantly and bloom and create a more coherent and consistent fabric. Now, I did have those swatches. Everything is like up in the air here. Everything's everywhere. And I don't know where that is now. So, oh, there it is. There they are. So, I can show you a washed and blocked sample, which is here. So you can see that it's really filled out a lot and it's become very puffy and soft. This is the unblocked version. And it really is quite a different consistency. And it's much thinner. You can see, you see that? So it's really going to change quite a lot in the blocking process. So those are going to be my pockets. So one is washed and blocked, one is not. And what I've done here is, let me see, the cardigan is knit from the bottom up. And you knit the body with all of these cables, the fronts and the back. And Rora wanted the long cardigan, so I think I had to knit it for something like 16 inches or something like that, and then worked the front, and then I worked the back, so you can see that I've got all of the neck shaping here, and I've got the armhole shaping done on that side. I've done the armhole shaping on the other side, and now I'm just working this up so I can cast that off as well. So basically we're going to be seaming this shoulder seam here, which then gives me my armhole, and this is the front. The front will be getting a button band added on, so it will extend a little bit further across, and then I need to knit the sleeves, and the sleeves again are also knit from the bottom up, and then I will need to seam them into the armhole like that. And you can see that this pocket is designed to, there you go, it'll fit in and it'll be seamless because the pattern, so hard to show you because of course it is this dark grey, which is the colour she chose, but the cable pattern matches the cable pattern that's underneath. So the idea of that is that the pockets will just quite seamlessly fit onto the fronts of the cardigan so that you don't really see it too much. But there we go. I am knitting, like I said, I'm using the whole super soft and I'm knitting it double, which I think does give me a slightly lighter weight gauge, a lighter weight fabric, but I'm spot on for gauge actually, than is recommended in the pattern. But I think this is going to be a lovely layering piece for her, and I think she's really going to enjoy wearing it. The other thing I'll say too is that I am knitting without a cable needle. That's generally how I knit cables these days, particularly when it's so difficult to show you, particularly when it's these 2x2 cable twists. They're very easy to do 1 by 1, and these ones on the front here, which do take a little bit more concentration, but they are all 2 and 1 cables, so they're super easy to just slip your stitches and rearrange them without the use of a cable needle, and I just feel it speeds things up quite significantly. I have found this project quite slow going, particularly because of that more complex cable that sits on the front panels, and that's just because I keep having to refer back to the chart. It's hard to memorize what's a 28 row cable pattern. You can kind of see at certain points where, you know, the direction of travel with things, and after you've done it a few times, then you certainly get to know when you've made a mistake anyway. But I do tend to find that I am still referring back to the chart. The rest of the cables you can memorize very quickly because they are very short cable repeats, so they're relatively straightforward, and that's the whole of the back. So it really is just these front panel cables that take a little bit more concentration. But I would also say, because of the colour, because it is this dark grey, I have really struggled, because on the front of on the right side, that's where you're doing all of your cables. You can kind of follow it and it's a bit easier to see, but when you're doing the back, you're just knitting all the knits and purling all the purls, and it can be harder to see what stitches are knit stitches and which ones are purl stitches, particularly when you start to lose the light in the evenings. We have now moved our clocks forward and it is getting brighter overall, so we are now getting a little bit more light to work by, and I think that, along with the familiarity of the pattern that I'm now getting, I have started to speed up quite a bit. So I would really, really like to have this done by Sunday, because my daughter is coming down from Dundee on Sunday, and I would love to have this off the needles, washed and blocked, in order to give her. And it will take a bit of effort to do that. The right front is almost finished, so I will get that finished today. I'll get it seamed, but I probably won't be able to cast on the sleeves today. I will probably start that tomorrow, but I don't think the sleeves will take a huge amount of time, because again, they are the more simple cable rather than these more complex larger 28 row repeat cables. So I'm hoping that I can memorize that pretty quickly and make some quick progress on that too. So I think these are also knitted on size 5mm needles too, which is also helping. And of course the two fingering weight yarns held together are, well, I think I'm trying to get them to be a worsted, and I think they're probably closer to a DK, but it seems to be working. And like I said, I've got my gauge spot on. I do think it will feel like a lighter weight layer than perhaps the very heavy worsted Aran spun yarns would. So there we go. That is the Pitied Whiskey, and it's by Thea Coleman, and that's the one I've really been doing quite a lot of work on, particularly in this last week or so. but I have another 2 whips that you have not yet seen. So I'll show you the first one that I cast on, which is this one here, and it is another Andrea Mowry. This is the Boho Blush, and it's a shawl. Somebody said to me recently that shawls are my socks. I always have one on the go, and I absolutely do, and I never have socks on the go unless unless I'm knitting it for somebody because they've asked for it. That tends to be the only time I have a sock on the needle. A shawl, however, I will always have a shawl on the needle. And this is my shawl at the moment. This is knit up in Kinross lace, which is 100% premium supreme lamb's wool. And it is spun up in Kinross, which is just outside Perth. And I bought this from Wee County Yarn's stall at Perth Festival of Yarn last September. And this is the colour Wildflower, which I absolutely love. I've got 2 skeins of it all wound up, so this is a full skein here. You can see how much I've used. Not very much, but I am getting to the longer rows now. I cast this on really because I needed a simple project, because obviously the cabled slate grey cardigan requires a lot of attention, and the blanket is very heavy and it's all scraps and comes with a big bag, not terribly portable. And I really needed something which was a little bit lighter, a bit easier to transport, and that I wouldn't require a massive amount of concentration, but would still be engaging, you know, would still be interesting. So that's why I decided I was going to cast this on. And yeah, I'm really pleased with it so far. This is so soft, I cannot tell you. They had a shawl that somebody had knitted up as a sample for them at Perth Festival, and it had been washed and blocked, and it felt like cashmere. It was unbelievably soft, and that's what convinced me to buy a couple of skeins. And I would say the fascinating thing is when you feel it in the skein, it doesn't actually feel very soft, but even just having knit this up, this feels incredibly soft. And I know that it's only going to soften up again when I wash it and block it. And like I said, it's this fabulous colour called Wildflower that I just really am enjoying just now. I think it's a gorgeous colour. And because it's the lace weight yarn, because they do a 4-ply as well, but because it's a lace weight, it's going to be a very lovely light cover-up piece, or a piece that I can carry around with me when I go shopping in a shopping mall, or when I'm travelling, or just be able to pop it on, and it'll take some of the chill off, but it won't be super heavy and cloying. So it will be, I'm hoping it will be a perfect summer shawl for me. This is a beautiful design. It's just basically going to keep moving through these garter sections, this single colour brioche, and then this is the old shell lace that I mentioned before, with the eyelets and the decreases in the centre. So it's a very simple lace, but I think it's really effective. And I'm back into a garter section just now before I'll repeat this single colour brioche. It's a long, large crescent shawl, and at the very end you add fringing to it as well. And I'm not altogether sure about that as the edging for mine. I'm still debating if that's exactly what I want, or whether I want to do tassels instead, or whether I want to do my fringing slightly differently. Do I want fringing at all? Do I want a picot edge instead, or do I want to finish on a lace repeat and then block out the lace into a kind of like a scalloped edge? So there are a variety of options, so I'm just kind of sitting with all of those possibilities while I knit on this loveliness. Like I said, it's a very lightweight, small project for me at the moment. I know it will get larger, but it's an easy project just to pop in my handbag at the moment and take on a train, or to knit night, or on a bus. So it's one of those projects for me. However, I do have one more project, and this was because the wonderful, I think her name is Agata Makiewicz, and she is Amanita on Instagram, and I think she's had a design sabbatical and she's coming back now, and so to celebrate that on Ravelry, she offered, I think it was a 24-hour offer, a special where you could get one of her patterns for free. And so I had a look through her patterns and I really liked one which was called the Plant Lady. I've been very much getting into my plants, which I'm going to share with you also a little bit later, but I decided I was going to cast this Plant Lady tee on, not least because I had just bought, and I'll push it out here, I had just bought some woolly knit linen cotton cones. I kind of like this colour, can you tell? Now this is called Litrium Yellow, this colour, and I think it's a 50% linen, 50% cotton. You can see that there are two strands plied together. So the darker strand is the linen and the lighter strand is the cotton. The cotton is really very fluffy. It kind of creates, I suppose, quite a little bit thick and thin. Can you see that? That's slightly thicker here, and then it gets slightly thinner and then slightly thicker again. It's not massively noticeable, and I think it creates a bit of interest in the fabric. So I had just received that at the same time that Agata had announced her free pattern. So I saw the Plant Lady tee and I put the two together and I thought they would be perfect. And I knew that I was going to be going up to Perth because the organiser, Eva, of Perth Festival of Yarn, was organising a Scottish wool producers showcase that weekend, and so I knew I was going to be going to that, and I wanted a project that would just be straight stockinette. But to get to the straight stockinette, you have to first work through the lace because it is a bottom-up tee. So I spent 3 days, I think, cracking my way through through the lace. You can see it here. I love how this linen cotton yarn is creating just the most wonderful stitch definition. Do you see that? And it's like leaves. It's just beautiful. And now I'm on to the body. I'm quite far up the body actually, I would say. So maybe I've just got another couple of inches to go on the body. But it's all just stockinette now, so it's just very soothing. I'll pop a photograph up of it so you can see what it's going to look like. It's just a very simple tee with this gorgeous lace at the bottom. And actually now that I have moved through the lace and I'm into the body, I'm already thinking about other yarns in my stash that I could knit another Plant Lady tee from. And I think it would also be really nice with long sleeves in perhaps something like a whole super soft, because it would be the right yarn weight. I am knitting again this in double strands because, and I'll show you, this yarn is lace weight yarn. Here you go. So I'm holding two together in order to get fingering weight. You see that? The cones come as 300 grams. So basically, and I'll just show you what I do, because somebody asked me this recently. They didn't understand how to cake up yarn from a cone, or how to do a double strand from a cone, because obviously you can't pull from the inside and the outside, you just have the outside. So I got this, which is a kitchen paper dispenser from Flying Tiger, that's the name, which is a really inexpensive shop in the centre of town. I think they're from Copenhagen, the brand, but most city centres, I would say, probably have a Flying Tiger. It didn't cost me very much. I think it was just maybe about £5 or something. It's wooden, and it fits a cone perfectly. So basically, I put that onto the dispenser, and then I take my ball winder. Now, This is just one that I bought. Again, I just bought this on Amazon. I don't even know what the brand is or anything, but it wouldn't have cost very much. And basically I attach this to a stool, like a wooden stool, and then I put this on the top and I thread this through the ball winder and I wind off, say for example, I think this ended up being like a 90 grams of the wool cotton, of the linen cotton. I don't weigh it as I go, I only weigh it afterwards, just to see how much I've actually got. I think I ended up with one which was 85 and one which was 90, which is fine. So now I'm just continuing on with that. And when I need more, I will wind more off. I will need more, but that's okay because I think I'm going to have plenty. I will just show you, and this should really go in the next section, but I will just show you that I did buy another cone from Woolly Knit. This is also the linen cotton, and you can see again the two strands of the darker linen and the lighter cotton. And this is called, what's this called? Is it Wexford Blue? I think. Yes, Wexford Blue. So it's just like a very dark navy, but I thought that would be really lovely too. So I will knit myself something else this summer in this lovely dark blue. And I also have a cone of, I think it's called geranium, which is kind of like a deep corally pink, and it's from Coast. It's not from Coast. It's from Holst, and it's their Coast base, and that's their cotton wool blend. So I think I'm kind of thinking about that and wondering if I want that as another plant lady tea. So definitely a possibility. So that's my other work in progress. So there we go. That's 4 works in progress right now. So I had said on Instagram the other day there that I had always considered myself to be a monogamous knitter, but with all these cast-ons I'm not sure I can call myself that right now. And somebody came back and said that she'd never considered me to be a monogamous knitter, which kind of made me think, and I think she's spot on actually. I think I've just got delusions of being a monogamous knitter and I'm not one at all. So that is certainly evidenced by these 4 cast-ons. So 2 that you had seen and 2 brand new ones. I am hoping, like I said, to get the Pitied Whiskey off the needles by this weekend. The Plant Lady Tea I don't imagine will be much long after that. The Boho Blush and the Melting Marl Blanket are, I think, a bit longer term projects. But I do have some plans for other projects. So I'll just talk to you a little bit about those. Have another slurp of my tea before I go on to that. So, let me see. So first of all, my friend Linda, who is Barbaknit on Instagram, and she has a wonderful podcast as well. She hasn't put a podcast out recently, but you should really go and check her out because I just think she's lovely. And she has brought out her first design, and honestly, it blows you away that this could be somebody's first design. It is truly astonishing. It's called Minster, and it is a colour work cowl, and the motifs, I think there's like 19 motifs, some are contemporary and that she's created herself, and some are inspired by very, very old Icelandic motifs in colour work. And so there's a beautiful mix of the two. And she very kindly sent me a copy of her new pattern. And so I've got a bit of a giveaway on that a little bit later on, so hold off for that. But on to the end of the podcast, and I'll share how you can win a copy of this pattern. But I'll show you what I'm going to be knitting mine in. At the EYF Edinburgh Yarn Festival in 2019, I purchased some lovely yarn from the Knitting Goddess, and it's this yarn here, and it is a rainbow, although you can't really see it as a rainbow because I've taken I've taken it all apart to lay it out, but there we go. these beautiful muted colours, which are just absolutely gorgeous. There's 12 skeins, there's 480 metres, so I've got absolutely plenty to do this project in. And I'm going to use 2 skeins of undyed BFL Massam blend. Now these two, and this is BFL Massam blend too. Oh, throwing the skeins at you now. Yeah, so that's that same blend as this is. I should say too, this is in one of my cocoon tree bags. This was the Tree of Life design, which unfortunately is not available anymore, but do go and check the cocoon tree out because she always has incredibly beautiful ones to choose from. But I'll leave a link to that as well in the show notes. But these 2 undyed skeins, so this one was from the Knitting Goddess, can you see that? Which I bought at the same time. And then when I realised that actually I didn't really have enough of the undyed to do anything with, I then went back to Ginger Twist, and she had a Massam Mayhem 4-ply undyed. So I bought that as well. So I think they're pretty much identical. They're maybe ever so slightly different, but I don't think you'll notice it at all, and I don't think you'll notice it in a colour work cowl. So I went through the pattern, and I have, because I want to be able to fade through these colours of the rainbow, and so I've gone through the pattern and the different motifs, and honestly Linda has put in a power of work on this because she has listed the yarn weights and meterages that she used for each one of the motifs. So I have gone back over that and I've reordered, which she says, you know, that you can do. You don't have to follow the order that it's laid out in. You can choose whichever order of the motifs, or if there's one motif you really like, you can keep doing that one, or you can do whatever you like. But I have reordered them so that I use up as much of each colour as I can as I move through each one, and so you'll get, I hope to get like the full rainbow going right throughout my cowl. So I'm really excited about that. I'm desperate to cast it on, but like I said, I've got this cabled cardigan that needs to get completed first, not least because I still have another knit for one of my kids to do, and I would like to get that done before, it'd be good to get it done before we're halfway through the year anyway. So anyway, that's the Minster Cowl by Linda Eriksdotter, and it is a wonderful pattern, and I highly recommend that you check it out. The next thing that I'm going to share with you is this pattern here, which is the Maywick. Now the Maywick is a design from Gudrun Johnson, and it was in her most recent book, The Shetland Trader. I have already knitted the Vare. You might remember that from a wee while back. I think I knitted it over December, January, and I had a lot of fun knitting that pattern, but that whole book is so full of beautiful patterns, and I knew that the other pattern that I really wanted to knit from it was called the Maywick. Now the Maywick is an all over lace top, and it uses 4 colours, and I just think it's really lovely. It's a very kind of traditional it's got 90s 70s vibes, which the whole book really does. So I am going to be going to a wedding reception in May, so next month, and I bought a really beautiful satin green, sort of jade green satin skirt, and so I'm going to need to knit a top to go with it. So that was what I was kind of on the lookout when I went to the Perth Scottish Wools Producers Showcase. It's a bit of a mouthful. So I was looking out for yarn that would do for that particular project, and I saw the perfect yarn, which was this amazing yarn from the Border Mill, and it's this Alpaca Rose, and it's a 4-ply yarn. It's 50% alpaca, 50% rose fibre, and it has, you can see it's very drapey, and it's just so soft and so silky, I mean, it is absolutely gleaming. Well, I chose, with the help of my best friend Jen and Estelle from Midwinter Yarns and Woolly Originals, we figured out this amazing colour combo. So you can see it's like this pale minty green, this kind of wonderful melon colour, this like darker jade, sort of like a soft mellow yellow, and this kind of grape shade here. So that's the 5 skeins together. Each of these are 50 grams, 175 metres. And so I got that, and then I got home and I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to knit with this. Am I going to knit an Elton and get some coordinating mohair? Or maybe if I did get coordinating mohair, I could do another rocket tee. I thought maybe I should do like a stripes, another pattern by Andrea Mowry that I've knitted in the past, and maybe just do it with short sleeves. So I was really quite undecided about what I was going to do. And then I started thinking, well, if I am going to get mohair, what colour mohair should I get? Probably quite a neutral one. Do I have anything in my stash before I order anything? And then I remembered that at Perth Festival of Yarn in September, I had bought 2 skeins of hand-dyed suri, and I thought they might be of similar colour. Well, oh my goodness. This is Moon Age Daydream by Blue Dot Yarns. It's a lace weight suri alpaca. There's 300 metres to the skein. I bought 2, and you will notice that every single colour that I bought is reflected in these wonderful hand-dyed skeins. So then I really did have, now I really feel like I've got options, but what I've decided to do is I'm going to knit this Wick. And my friend Jen really helped me to figure out which order to create using these. So I'm going to have the fluffy suri with these gorgeous drapey shades, gorgeous drapey yarn, these beautiful shades of alpaca rose for the Wick. I will need to cast it on ASAP. So as soon as I finish this cabled cardigan, hopefully in the next week, I will be casting this on and then knitting like the wind in order to make sure that I have a top to wear with my skirt. So that's my plan, and I'm really excited about it. I think it'll be beautiful, but I'm just really going to need to get a wriggle on. I think probably I will only end up using one of these skeins, which will leave this skein left over to do perhaps a nice little shawlette or something to go with it, or maybe see if I've got any leftovers with this. So yes, I will be having a think about what I want to do with the leftovers, because these leftovers are just too beautiful not to be included in something. So yes, that's my plan for that. So that's another big cast on. The other 2 patterns that I've got my eye on just now, one is a souffle, which is a gorgeous new pattern by Laura Penrose of Penrose Knits. She has the Knitting Pickle podcast, and she has launched herself as a wonderful designer. And her pattern, the souffle, came out just last Friday, and it is all over mohair tee. So you start with 1 strand and then you move into double strand, and at the place where you make that transition, you create a beautiful little ruffle around the yoke line. It is absolutely gorgeous. It's very cute. The testers for the souffle have done an absolutely wonderful job at showcasing the real gorgeousness of this particular design, and the variability of it, how it looks on so many different sizes, but also in so many different colours with different levels of positive or negative ease. So it's been a really lovely design to see come through fruition. And I look forward to casting one of those on myself. I do have some thoughts about what yarn in my stash I could use, and I will share that with you, I think, another time, maybe when I'm closer to casting it on. That's if I've not changed my mind and cast it on in something completely different. But I do think it would be a really lovely a lovely light little top for the summertime, and I really do have my eye on these summer knits. And then the last thing is the Albion jumper by Michelle Wang, which I will be casting on. This is the jumper that my youngest son has chosen. He wants it in black, so I have a cone of black Holst Super Soft to knit it up in. It's almost like a Gansey, it's got a textured pattern on it. And so after I have knitted up the Maywick, the next cast on will be this Albion, because I really want to get it knitted up while I have maximum amount of light. And really May, June, July is when we will have the most light here in Scotland. So I will crack on with that next, because yeah, I really want him to have that, and yeah, and that'll be the last of my Christmas knits, finished up probably in July before I start in the next lot. So there we go. That is everything that I've been wearing, that's on my needles, that's off my needles, and is soon to be on my needles. I will just share with you some of the things that are new to me, because I've got a couple of extra purchases that I made at the Scottish Wool Producers Showcase that I will tell you about. And I've had some really lovely gifts too, so I want to share those with you as well. So, Scottish Wool Producers Showcase was a wonderful event. It was maybe about 10 stalls altogether, and they were just so interesting. You know, I think I spent an hour going around just the stalls there and chatting to people and having a squish of the yarn, and you know, having a thought about, you know, what I could do with all of these wonderful different textures, and I was just really impressed with everything that everybody shared. It reminded me of at Edinburgh Yarn Festival in 2019, and I think also in 2018, there was a separate room which was just for like locally produced rustic yarn and small from single flocks, and it was really special. And of course then the rest of the event was really taken over by, you know, very beautiful hand dyeds and gorgeous project bags and all kinds of things. But there was this one room, and it was a smaller room, and it had, again, it maybe had between 10 and 15 stalls. And it included things like Garthenor and Iona wool and things like that. Well, that's kind of what it reminded me of. It was just really people who are incredibly passionate about sheep and about fibres in general, about the spinning process, about the production process, about the animal welfare, and about the land itself. And it was an incredible privilege actually to be in amongst them and to spend time, you know, with the products of all of that devotion and all of that labour. And then to come home with some of it feels really delightful. Although I have to say, I could have come home with something from every single producer there, because I could have really gone to town with my credit card, but but I was good, and I didn't go too crazy with it all. But I did get some of this, and this is Lammermuir Wool Hillfoot's Blend 4-ply. It says, a soft yarn made from Shetland fleece from our own flock, blended with locally sourced Scotland. Worsted spun to create a soft, silky and slightly neppy yarn with great stitch definition. It's 100 grams. It's from the 2018 clip. It's in the shade Emsket, and there's an approximate 370 to 404 metres per skein. And this is from EH41, so we're EH6 in this part of Edinburgh, so it's a much more local, very local yarn. from Lothian. So it's this gorgeous grey shade. And Lammermuir wool had a special, so you could get 5 skeins and you could get a bit of a discount. So my friend Jen and I both decided we would go halfers on 5 skeins of this. And we also got 5 balls of this, which is Lammermuir wool lace, and it's Shetland again. Pure, grown by our own flock, pure Shetland yarn, spun in lanolin for an easier knit, perfect for shawls and delicate items. Wash and block after knitting to see this yarn whiten and fluff up. And this is from the 2019 clip, and there's about 400 meters per ball, and we got 5 of those and 5 of these. And Jen and I actually have other undyed yarns. I think she's got some Garthenor, and I think I've got some Shetland that I picked up at Perth Festival back in 2019. So I think we're going to have a dye day. I think we're going to get together and get our dye equipment out and have a bit of a guddle and a bit of a play and dye up some of this beautiful natural shades and see what we can create in our dye pots. So that will be exciting. So I'm really looking forward to doing that, and it'll be fabulous. The other things that I have to share with you, I mean, because the other things I got from Perth was the Border Mill alpaca lace. But the other things that I've received have been really incredibly generous gifts, which has been really lovely. So the first thing I wanted to share with you was this beautiful little mini skein, and it's from Ainsworth Prynne. Ainsworth and Prynne hand dyed, and it's a merino silk, and it's in the colourway Linnet, and it's from theknittingshed.com. Isn't that just absolutely beautiful? My friend Raya gave this to me because I got to play Yarn Fairy a couple of weeks ago. She posted in our Knit Night group that she had run out of Holst Super Soft in the colour Jasper, and she was wondering if anybody in our group had any left so that she could finish her shawl. And funnily enough, I did, because I used Jasper in my shawlography. And so I popped over to her side of town and took this half ball of Jasper with me so that she could finish off her shawl. And she very kindly gave me this gorgeous little mini skein. So thank you, Raya. It's absolutely beautiful. I do have some merino silk single ply yarn. I think I'll be able to pair it with and do something really lovely. So I do love when you're able to take like a small amount of yarn and really showcase it in something beautiful. So I'm going to have fun figuring out what I want to do with that. And I also received this absolutely incredible, beautiful skein. And this is from somebody who came to visit, Leanna. Hi, Leanna. Leanna came to visit Edinburgh from Colorado, and she popped into Ginger Twist. And my friend Jen, who I've mentioned, sometimes works in Ginger Twist, and she was working there that day, and Leanna asked Jen if she knew me, and of course Jen does. So she asked if she could leave this incredibly beautiful skein, which is 100% Cornwall wool, grown in Montana, woolen spun. It's fingering weight. It is absolutely, I can't even describe how this feels. We don't have Cornwall wool in Scotland, as far as I'm aware. It's not a blend that's available to us. Well, it's not even a blend, is it? It's purebred Cornwall, so we don't have that breed of sheep here, as far as I'm aware. Or maybe we do, and it's just not something that's just readily available. But it was an incredible thing to receive in such a lovely way as well. She left me a really beautiful note. Thank you so much, Leanna. It was such a lovely, such a delightful surprise. And I'm going to have to figure out something really very cool to do with this yarn. Maybe it will be like a textured cowl or something, because it's so soft, and it would be so lovely to have, you know, close to your neck, keeping you cozy in, because it's just so beautiful. So it's Elsa wool. Can you see that? There we go. And yeah, so that was a really lovely surprise. Gosh, and then I had another gift. Goodness me. So another viewer of the podcast, who is called Marion, and she got in touch with me, and she lives close to Cognac in France, which is quite close to where my parents live now. And so she got in touch and said that she had bought some Nutiden yarn, but had decided that actually she didn't enjoy knitting with the unspun yarn, and would I like to have the Nutiden that she had bought. And if I did, I'd just send her my address and she would pass it on to me. So I said yes, which is an incredibly kind offer. And then I didn't hear back from her for a wee while, and then weirdly enough, her name popped up into my head, and I remembered the Nutiden a week past Saturday, I think it was, in the morning. And I thought, oh, I wonder what happened with the Nutiden. I hope it didn't get lost in the post. And then literally the postman knocked on the door, and there was this wonderful box, and it had this fabulous Nutiden in it. Isn't this gorgeous? Now I had a little look. I think this colourway was called the Tunette, and this is the salt. So a little bit of the, and I have some leftovers from some Nutiden I bought a while back. You can see the unspun nature of it. So I'm not quite sure exactly how much I've got, but I've got, I mean, it's plenty to do like a garment with. I think particularly if I was to hold it with a strand of mohair, which is what my plan is. So I'm looking out for the Drops Kid Silk in Sage, but unfortunately it's not available just now. So I think it said it was going to be available in week 16. So I'm not quite sure when week 16 is. Maybe it's in a week or so's time, if it's week 0 is from the 1st of January. But but I'm hopeful that that will come back into stock, and then I'll be able to get that, and then I can hold it with a strand of this gorgeous Nutiden. Nutiden, if you're not aware, is from a company called Honor och Ern, and they are a Swedish mill, and they produce this hand-dyed and unspun yarn, and it's an incredibly beautiful and very different type of yarn, and so really requires like a different type of knitting, really. It's much slower, it's a much more meditative process. You can't, like tug on the yarn or it'll just break. So it's similar to Plotalopi, if you've ever knitted with Plotalopi, but it's much softer. Although that said, each plate, each colourway that's produced is a slightly different variation of fibres. So each one feels a little bit different, and might be a little bit, some will be a bit thicker, some will be a bit sturdier, some will have longer staple, some will be a shorter, it all really depends. So, but Caroline of Nutiden Yarns has a wonderful podcast where she goes through each one of these, and you get access to that as a patron. And they open up for patrons on a relatively regular basis. So if you're interested, you can get it if you're not a patron, but it is really difficult, whereas they do an early release for Nutiden Yarns for patrons. So so I would keep, if you're interested, I would keep an eye open on that. But that was not the only thing that was inside that package, because there was another package inside the box, and it was this, and it is a beautifully knit, like truly beautifully knitted, Marion, shawlography in these, and I think it feels like whole super soft to me. You can correct me if I'm wrong, Marion. And it's in these shades of grey and cream, and it is just absolutely beautiful. Look at this. Now, this was Marion's first experience of a Stephen West knit-along, and she really enjoyed the process of knitting it, but at the end of it felt as though it wasn't a piece that she would actually get some wear out of. So she sent it on to me so that somebody could get some joy from the shawl, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to hold on to it for just now, and then maybe a little later on I might do a giveaway for it. but it will be, it's very difficult it will be very difficult to let it go because it's absolutely exquisite. I'll hold it up so you can see like the slippy V section, and then there's these wonderful I-cord loops, and then the slip stitch in the garter, and these cross stitches. So as you know, I knitted one of these myself as well, but it's in very different colours, so it's just so fascinating to see the same shawl but in vastly different colourway, and it creates a completely different piece. So that was an incredible surprise. So I wanted to share that with you all as well. So that's basically, I think, all of my acquisitions and gifts, which were, I'm incredibly grateful to have received. They were all such delightful surprises. So thank you. Okay, one more thing actually that I wanted to share with you that I was also gifted, and I was gifted this by Eva at the Scottish Wool Producers Showcase, and that's because Sarah Wolfe, who co-authored this with Josephine Walton, was doing a talk which I attended, which was fascinating, and this is her book Knit Spin Sweden, and this is a 2nd edition, so I think this book comes out at the end of this month, so I've got a slightly earlier release copy, and it is a fascinating book. It's got some patterns in it like this, and then it's got a lot of historical material in it. It's got a great section on visiting Sweden, so if you're going to visit Sweden and do a bit of a yarn pilgrimage, this would definitely be a book that you would want to have and take with you. She's got a lot about the different types of breeds. Basically, she went to Sweden on a trip and discovered that a lot of the Swedish yarn available in the shops was all imported. And so she really kind of made it a mission to kind of explore the different breeds and the different yarns that are actually available from the older breeds in Sweden, and really wants to champion them and give them a bit of a showcase so that they can experience a revival. Like I said, there's a lot of historical stuff here as well, so if you're interested in the history of knitting in Sweden, then you probably would want to check it out. Look at this lady here. Isn't she fabulous with their double pointed needles? So it's an incredible book. I haven't had a proper chance to properly, dive into it and explore everything that's available in it, but it's an incredibly lovely thing. I'm just very grateful to have received it. So there we go. Sarah is now starting her research on Scottish wool, so I'll be really interested to see how her research develops and the book that comes out on the back of all of that. So certainly I know that in Scotland we have lots and lots of breeds of yarn and a very rich knitting history too, so I'll be really, really excited to hear more about that as well. As her research progresses, so something to keep our eyes open for. So that was all the gifts. Oh my goodness, thank you so much, everybody. So we'll move from there into, I suppose, what's been bringing me joy. And one of the things I wanted to share with you was the botanical gardens, because the botanical gardens in Edinburgh are just, I think, one of my most favourite places in the whole of Edinburgh, and I'm really fortunate that I live relatively close to the botanical gardens, so I can hop on my bike and go along the cycle path network, and I can be there in about 15 minutes, so that's really not very far away at all. And a couple of weeks ago, before we had our cold snap, the magnolias all bloomed, and the magnolias didn't bloom last year in the botanical gardens because there was a cold snap and the buds all got frosted, and so they didn't bloom. But this year they have been absolutely glorious, and I started to see magnolias in people's gardens from the bus, And so I knew that they were probably going to be in bloom in the botanical gardens. So we made a special trip, and they were just absolutely breathtaking. I'll put up some footage here because I can't even describe to you how incredibly beautiful they were. It felt like being in like in a cathedral, or just in one of the most magical, sacred places on earth. It was just so breathtaking, being surrounded particularly with these very large pink blossoms. Just so very, very beautiful. And then after we had visited the magnolias, we popped along to the botanical shop because I saw that they had recently received an award, and so I was intrigued. I hadn't been to the shop in years. So we popped in, and they had such lovely gifts and jewellery and plants and planters and lots of books as well. So I came away with 2 books which I was going to share with you. The first one is actually knitted by somebody who works for the Botanical Gardens, and it's published by the Royal Botanic Garden in Edinburgh, and it's called Plant Magic, and it's by Gregory Kenneser. And basically it's like a reference book, you can see. So it tells you a bit about each different type of plant, and gives a bit of a description on how it's been used, and it's a really fascinating book. And then this other book that I got is by Dr. Katie Cooper, and it's called Plant Therapy, and it's actually more about houseplants. And it's just a very beautiful book. It's got these lovely images, and it tells you how to take care of each one of the plants, and it says how this plant cares for you and how you can take care of this plant for each one. I have been very into my house plants since I moved into my new home last August. So I'm sitting next to a beautiful rubber plant called Pearl. And Pearl has a lovely new leaf coming up, and having just produced a new leaf really recently. So I'm really loving how she's thriving there. And I repotted my hibiscus. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, you probably are familiar with my hibiscus, because every time she blooms, I take a photograph of her. She's called Hermione. So Hermione is absolutely thriving in her new pot. I was really concerned when I took off the old plant pot, the old plastic plant pot, which had been containing her roots, is that I had damaged the roots, and that she wasn't going to make it. So I was really worried about her. But I put her into this new, much larger pot, and I've given her fresh compost, and she's just producing more and more leaves. And from her bare trunk, or it's not trunk, but the stem, it's quite a wooded stem, she started to produce new green shoots coming off the side. So, and she has another blossom coming up, another big bud, and possibly another one after that. So I'm absolutely thrilled with how she's taking to her new home. And the other plant, I just got a new plant recently, and it's an umbrella plant, and it's been putting up lots of brand new ones. Her name is Eudora. And Eudora, the umbrella plant, is in our bedroom, and she's just lovely. She seems to be liking her new home too. Her leaves are very lovely and glossy, and she's produced some new leaves since we got her. So she obviously likes her new spot as well. We used to have an umbrella plant when I was growing up at home. I don't quite know whatever happened to the umbrella plant, but it was huge. It was a plant that sat in its pot on the floor, and it must have been maybe about a metre or so tall. So I am aware that they get very tall, and I hope that mine does too, because that would be lovely. So yeah, I'm just really enjoying my plants. So these were two really very welcome additions to my plant library. And I do have plans to plant some flowers for cutting in a couple of planters outside in the garden. So I think I'm going to be planting some peonies and some gladioli and some zinnia maybe. So I'm quite excited about that too. So yeah, maybe some alstroemeria. So yes, I would like to, because we live up a fair few floors, I would like to be able to have the garden, enjoy the garden outside, and then be able to bring the garden inside and have some cut flowers from there in my home. So that's something I'm going to be working towards, I think, over this next season. Something else that's bringing me joy, well, there is a new bookshop. Now, where is... there it is. There's a new bookshop opened up in Edinburgh. It's opened up at the foot of the walk, at the foot of Leith Walk, which is really undergoing quite a miraculous regeneration, I suppose. It's now got Pico Tea, which is an artisan tea shop. There's a lovely baker's there now as well. And there's an art gallery, and now there is this bookshop, and the bookshop is called Argonaut Books. So we popped in there the other day there, and my husband and I both chose a book each, and I chose The Silence of Girls by Pat Barker, which is one of these books which takes a Greek, something from Greek history or a Greek myth, and brings it and retells the story. So that's that one. And then there's this one which my husband chose, which is called The Lamplighters, which sounds really interesting. It's about the three keepers vanish from a remote lighthouse miles from the shore. The entrance door is locked from the inside, the clocks have stopped, the table is set for a meal left uneaten. What happened to those three men out on the tower? Can their secrets ever be recovered from the waves? 20 years later, a writer approaches the women they have left behind, determined to solve the puzzle. Helen, Jenny and Michelle should have been united by the tragedy. Instead, it drove them apart, but only in confronting their darkest fears can the truth begin to surface. So there we go. We got those two books. They both look really interesting. I've started to read The Silence of the Girls. I'm only one chapter in, but I'm already really enjoying it. Sorry, itchy nose. It's all these fibres. So that was great. That's really lovely. And just whenever I think if you get like a new bookshop in your area, a new independent bookshop, you really need to go and support it. If we have to support what we want to see in our community, we need to do that financially, and we need to do that by word of mouth and by sharing the news of its presence. And so yes, give Argonaut Books a wee check out if you can. Something else I've been really enjoying is some audio podcasts. So I've been listening to How to Fail by Elizabeth Day. Elizabeth is a wonderful interviewer, and she has had, I think it's in its 13th season, or 13th season's just finished. And she interviews people about what they believe to be their 3 top failures, which sounds very negative and everything, but actually it's not, because it's about how they moved through those experiences and what they learned from it and how they've gone on to succeed. And she interviews people like Kazuo Ishiguro and Matt Haig and Jacqueline Wilson, so quite large and important writers. But she's also got some actors on there as well. Stanley Tucci, Adrian Dunbar, she's interviewed more recently. And I also listened to her interview Brené Brown, which was a good one. And I also heard her interview Stephen Bartlett. And Stephen Bartlett is one of the youngest dragons to enter into Dragon's Den, and to be one of the regular dragons there. And so that's how I've heard of him. And then I listened to Elizabeth Day's How to Fail with Stephen Bartlett, and I thought it was an excellent interview. And through that, I discovered that he had interviewed Elizabeth Day for his podcast, which is called Diary of a CEO. So then I went on and listened to his interview of her, which was also really excellent. So I'll leave links to all of those if you want to go and check them out. But Elizabeth Day has interviewed over 100 people for her podcast, and so there's lots of names to dive into, and some will be familiar to you and some won't, but I can guarantee every single interview is absolutely worth listening to. Highly recommend. And then the last thing I wanted to share of what's been bringing me joy is 3 cafes that I visited. So last weekend I popped through to see my youngest son, the one who wants the black jumper, and he lives in Glasgow. He's training to be an opera singer at the Royal Scottish Conservatoire, and he and his lovely girlfriend Rihanna took me out to Chaiovna, which is a tea house in Glasgow's West End, and it was completely delightful. It's very quirky. It was very busy. We got there and we got the last table, so that was fortunate. And we had some delicious teas. I chose an orange blossom oolong, which was just delicious. Served in lovely bowls and beautiful teapots, and every single one is a little bit different, and it's got a real focus, I think, on what is unique and what is lovely. So we really enjoyed that. That was lovely. We had a plate of Turkish delight, and we had some baklava for the table as well, so we had some sweet treats too, and it was just delightful. And right next door to it was just the most amazing second-hand bookshop I think I've ever been in my life. It was stacked, absolutely stacked, and just completely phenomenal, and with a very sweet cat. So so that's worth checking out too if you end up going to visit. Another lovely cafe I went to was the weekend before. So after I went to the Scottish Wool Producers Showcase, I went on to Dundee because my daughter, who lives there, was performing in a burlesque performance that evening, and so I went along to that, and it was wonderful to see her dance and sing, and she was just completely wonderful. So that was brilliant. And then I stayed over, and the next morning she and her boyfriend Sam took me to what I'm going to get is Empire State Coffee Artisan Roasters. It's a bit of a mouthful, but I think it's quite a new cafe that's opened up in Dundee, and they had the most fabulous gluten-free paninis. I have never even heard of a gluten-free panini. I have been gluten-free for, gosh, probably about 12 years now, maybe longer. But not by choice, trust me. But I have really seen a big improvement in gluten-free offerings in cafes in particular over the years, and I was really delighted that there was an option at this particular one to have a gluten-free panini. And alongside that, which you would expect with it being a specialist coffee place, their flat whites were absolutely delicious, so really enjoyed that. And then I've got 2 in Edinburgh, so so after we'd been at Argonaut Books, we walked up Leith Walk a little bit. Leith Walk is currently mostly dug up. It is undergoing a massive construction effort as they attempt to put in all the infrastructure for the trams, and they're reconfiguring the whole area, and so it has been like that for years now. Hopefully, I think the plan is to finish it in 2023, and I do hope so for the sake of the businesses along there, because it must be, and for the residents, because I think it is hugely disruptive. But we walked up Leith Walk a little bit and came to another lovely cafe called Under the Arch. Now they have a cafe and they have a wine bar. I think I was speaking to Rebecca of the Crea Bea podcast, and she said that she and her partner had been there for cocktails, and it was really lovely too. We were there a bit early for cocktails. We were there at lunchtime, so I had a really nice soup, which was sweet corn, chipotle and lime soup, and it was very good and served again with gluten-free bread, and then they had a big selection of gluten-free cakes. So it's always just such a relief actually to be able to go out to some place that does cater for gluten-free. So I find so many places are offering food for vegans, but not for gluten-free. So anyway, there we go. That was a lovely cafe, and it was very quirky. It was quite cold, but there was lots of blankets thrown around everywhere so you could snuggle up. And there was some outside seating as well, but it was snowing when I was there 2 weeks ago. So, so yes, we didn't sit outside. And lastly, the Round Square Cafe on Morningside Road, at the very top of Morningside Road. We went to Morningside to go and check out all of the charity shops, and I went there with my daughter and my son's girlfriends, and we were looking for dresses, and I got my skirt from there for the wedding reception. And before we set off on our expedition into all the charity shops down Morningside, and really it is one of the best places if you are in Edinburgh. That's where you should go charity shop shopping. But we started off with a coffee at Round Square, and I will pop in a picture here because I got the most amazing latte art at Round Square. So that really properly delighted me, and it set our shopping trip onto a very good footing. So, so yeah, Round Square at the top of Morningside Road in Edinburgh. So those are some cafe recommendations and why I enjoyed them so much. Okay, well that really brings us to the end of the podcast. It's a long one, which hasn't really surprised me because I knew I had an awful lot to share with you today. So if you've made it all the way through to the ending, good for you, because there is a giveaway. So like I mentioned, I have 2 copies of Linda's Minster cowl pattern to give away. And so in order to win, you have to like and subscribe this channel. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and then leave me a comment about what you are celebrating right now. You know, I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to focus on celebration, even when it's a little thing. You know, so sometimes it's about, celebrating that, we did go out and we had a lovely coffee. Or sometimes it's celebrating something bigger, or sometimes it's celebrating something that's gone really well in our knitting, or something that we've managed to mend, or something that we've cast off, or maybe we're celebrating a new cast on. Whatever it is that you are celebrating, leave a comment, and by the time I podcast, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks, that will be when our deadline is, and I will draw 2 winners for a copy of the Minster cowl pattern by Linda Eriksdotter. And I am going to contribute one of those, and the other person that's contributing one is Amelia Carvalho, and she has the Mila's Sweet Makes Etsy shop, which you should also check out. She's a Canadian project bag maker, and she has also contributed one of these patterns to be given away as well. So thank you very much, Amelia. So yes, if you leave a comment sharing about what you are celebrating right now, then you'll be in to win a copy of the Minster cowl design pattern. Which brings us to a poem, and it's a poem about celebration. So I thought we'd just have a very short one just to round off because it's been such a long podcast. Again, it's by John O'Donoghue, one of my very favourites. Again, it's from Benedictus, one of my favourite poetry books. And this is For an Occasion of Celebration. Now is the time to free the heart. Let all intentions and worries stop. Free the joy inside the self. Awaken to the wonder of your life. Open your eyes and see the friends whose hearts recognize your face as kin. Those whose kindness is watchful and near, encouraging you to live everything here. See the gifts the years have given, things your effort could never earn. The health to enjoy who you want to be, and the mind to mirror mystery. Here we go. So I wish you lots of things to celebrate over the coming weeks, the little things and the big things, and I will look forward to sharing more of my knitting with you next time. Until then, take good care.